We continued our discussion on leadership. Remember, we are learning from Bible leaders how they led, what lessons we can draw so that we ourselves can become better leaders. That's why the Bible was written, so that we can learn from it. It's a pity sometimes we don't learn much out of it because we just want to act as if we are the first people to be leaders. No. There were leaders before us. And if we learn from them, we'll avoid their mistakes. Of course, somebody says that one thing history teaches us is that people don't learn from history. But that's a bad lesson to learn because things are kept in record so that you are not condemned to repeating the mistakes of others. Our next leader is Rehoboam. Rehoboam is the son of Solomon, and he has become king at a time when Solomon has backslidden, has acted unlike the wise young man that became king after David. He got lost. I think he ruled for more than 40 years. And in that period, he changed his direction, married women that were not godly, and became an ungodly person, which sounds like that what Rehoboam, the legacy that Rehoboam got of his father Solomon, not the wise guy that he was. You know, Solomon's wisdom was a gift from God. We know that because it's written in the Bible. Genetics had nothing to do with it, as his son Rehoboam soon found out after his father's death. In one fell swoop, Rehoboam lost half of his kingdom simply by being unwise. Is that something we need to learn very quickly? That our pedigree cannot influence us, our leadership. We need to learn something out of our parents, out of our predecessors, and draw lessons, then decide to implement it. But automatically becoming like our father, not much. It needs to be a predecessor success can mislead you. The fact that he was wise, the fact that he was famous, the fact that God protected his kingdom, despite him not obeying him, he still protected Solomon's kingdom, made the young son think that he could run things badly. Are you like that? You have taken over an organization that is very successful, everything working right. And because it sounded so easy for your predecessor to run things, you watched him and he was doing it very easily. You think you also can do it very easily. So you're not putting a lot of effort. You're not trying to learn. You're not being careful. You are not even consulting. You're not seeking for advice because of your predecessor's great success. That success of your predecessor may be your undoing. The same thing with initial success. When you succeed, like Solomon did, succeed initially, you start trusting your success. You start thinking, wow, I've earned for things. So instead of putting in work, preparing for decisions, consulting, you start making decisions without properly thinking. You end up with a problem in your leadership. That's one of the things Rehoboam had to learn the hard way, that leadership is not genetic. It's not passed from one person to the other simply by birth. It is something each party has to work on. Each leader must work completely from scratch in his own leadership. Being careful what decision he is making, seeking advice from people who know better. That's what Rehoboam missed. You know, King David was the grandfather of this Rehoboam. A wise king, a godly king. And as a grandfather, he is not too far removed. The boy must have heard all the stories about the exploits of his grandfather. King Solomon, his father, was the wisest man on earth. What a heritage Rehoboam had. However, his mother, like I said, Solomon had married strange women. His mother was Naamah, who was a Norman, an Ammonite. We read about Rehoboam's accession to be king of Israel and Judah. At that time, both of them are together upon the death of his father Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 11 verse 43, and it's also in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles chapter 9 verse 31. But actually, most of Rehoboam's story is told in 1 Kings 12 and also 1 Kings 14, 21 to 31. But you can also find it in 2 Chronicles chapter 10, 11, and 12. You know, in 2 Chronicles chapter 13 verse 7, we see Jeroboam's enemy described. In Matthew chapter 1 verse 7, he is listed as a forefather of Jesus Christ. This same Rehoboam. You know, part of the problem of Rehoboam is his parentage. Your parent is not always right, but you need to respect him. I think very, very important to look at the background he had. Should have asked himself, how did David succeed? What were the problems of my father Solomon? And then determine that because he knows that the reason David was such a success was because he trusted in God. But my father, towards the end, did not trust in God. I want to be a success. And I want to follow my father David, my grandfather David. That's what he missed. The ability to learn from history. The ability to listen to the stories of King David and see how they can be replicated in his own life. You know, rabbinic tradition says that this King Rehoboam had a mother called Naamah, was actually not as strange as we thought. History tells that he was actually righteous because he had converted to Judaism. And in fact, he is called, the Bible calls her as one of two doves. They say these two doves illustrate God's providence in adding both a Moabite and Ammonite as descendants of two Lot daughters to the Messiah's lineage. You know, when you read in Matthew about the who are the parents of Jesus, you are going to find a Moabite in that story. You are going to have a Ammonite in that story. The Ammonite is actually this one. And it's important to understand that God can use anybody and everything if only it is his choice. Unlike King Saul, or even King David, or even King Solomon, you need to understand that this king was not a pure Jew. It was 50% Jewish and then 50% Ammonite. So he was half caste, which was not very good because kings were not supposed to have married out of Israel. In fact, they were not supposed to have many wives. Like future successors, Rehoboam married Jewish women himself to reinforce the illegitimacy of his royal bloodline. His oldest son, Abijah, by his wife Maacah, became king upon Rehoboam's death, so that his son, Abijah, was more Jewish than King Rehoboam. You know, one of the things that is very important is to understand that if the mother actually converted to Judaism, it then means that there's no reason why Rehoboam was not a man who feared God. Because mothers have more influence than even fathers. But you see, history is teaching us it can influence you, but cannot determine your success. It is you to decide what to do. Your parentage may have a contribution, but not a determination. And it's important to become a person who will not do something because people have done it. You will not do it because my parents did it. You will not do it because that's the way we do things. You always do it because it's the right thing to do. And when that is the way you are going to live your life, I think it will certainly be something that will give you wisdom, and you'll not copy wrong things and become like Rehoboam. We need to avoid becoming Rehoboams in terms of decision making. I think that will be something important. So, what is your history? Have you learned anything from it? Are there things that didn't go right with your predecessor? Are there things that didn't go right with your parents? What caused them to go bad? Can you avoid it? Are there things they did well? What made them go well? How can you learn and become even a greater success than your predecessor or even your parents? Rehoboam, unfortunately, became a failure. And I think that can be quite a problem. You know, we start by looking at Rehoboam's first years, immediately he became king. He was, remember, this boy is the firstborn of Naamah, the Ammonite woman. But looking at his age, it was roughly a year before Solomon became the monarch of Israel, when he is born, just about the time he is becoming a monarch and becoming a leader in Israel and Judah. And he ruled for 40 years. So it's just above 40 years. But that means he, as a small boy, he saw his father when the father was very, very respectful of God, when he was truly a worshiper. Like we have seen that Naamah was said to have been righteous. The Bible makes it clear that Solomon was not. So that in the final years, he could not have been a very good example to Rehoboam. At first, Solomon appeared wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord God, like his father David. But it became apparent, however, that Solomon later became half-hearted in the things of God. Eventually, as he continued ruling, his many foreign wives, he seemed to have really been serious about getting one wife after the other. And was not getting Jewish women, he was getting foreign wives. They turned away Solomon from the true God, stooping so low as to worship despicable idols. And even with the insistence of his wives, he started building altars for them. In other words, Rehoboam's parents didn't raise Rehoboam in the fear admonition of the Lord. But let's be clear, they are not to blame for his behavior. For as an adult son, he had a decision to make. He was a king, and he could make good decisions or bad decisions. So bad parenting is dangerous. It may have contributed in a bad way to who Rehoboam became. And my question is, have you heard of the statement, you have not succeeded until your successor succeeds? What are you doing to prepare people so that even after you are out of the picture, there's still going to be success in that organization, in that family, in that church, whatever it is you are practicing your leadership? I think don't be like Solomon, who never thought about his son. He just enjoyed himself. He never invested. The way David had invested in Solomon, preparing him, we never see any preparation, any investment in Rehoboam. And I think it's important to ask yourself, what are you doing in succession planning and investing so that your success does not end with you? It can go beyond your grave. And I think that will be very, very important to understand. So we have the example of David preparing Solomon. We have the example of Solomon not preparing his son, or even any preparation was negative. You know, after Solomon's death, Rehoboam becomes king. But you know, he is in the middle of wickedness. By the time he is dying, the place is full of wickedness. in this United Kingdom of Israel and Judah, there is a lot of trouble because nobody is living right. Like many royals, remember Rehoboam is a prince. He may have been too protected to see what was happening around him. As the people suffered from the latter years rule of Solomon, the young man doesn't seem to notice it. But again, a growing number of his subjects were ripe for revolt against Solomon. They had really pushed it too far. But this young man who was taking over the government doesn't seem to know. But you know, the moment Solomon dies, Jeroboam is called back from exile in order to become the new king. But of course, it's Rehoboam who becomes king. But he is now back in the land. What is the lesson we learned from here? You should begin your leadership by studying not just your predecessors. What about your followers? Don't assume you know them just because you have been close to the former head. Don't assume you're okay. Rehoboam may have assumed he understands his kingdom, but the kingdom was bleeding. It was fed up with the rule of his father, but he never sensed that. So he does not treat the matters of urgency with urgency. Is that the way you started? Do you see the importance of being a student the first month, the first years of your leadership? Learning from your juniors, learning from anybody and everybody about what is it that they expect of you. What is it they have been doing? What has been going well? What has been going badly? That's what Rehoboam missed. Preparing and learning is what he missed. And maybe that's what you're also missing. You just want to, I don't want to know what happened before me. You need to know something about the people. You can't lead people blindly. You need to know what is it they like, what do they understand, which language is best for them, what will make them be with me and support me. All those are things that you need to think about and spend your time clearly preparing. Rehoboam ignored all that and went ahead to rule the way he wants it, not the way he is needed to. And that was quite an unfortunate situation, because that's the one that finally ended up giving him the loss of his kingdom. You know, after hearing the demands of the northern half of the United Kingdom, Rehoboam rejected the counsel of Solomon's wise men. What did he do? Instead, he embraced what his peers, young people like him, was telling him. Shaking his pinky finger at Jeroboam and his men, because Jeroboam has come back and is now with these people that are complaining about the Solomon's rule. He says, he's shaking his hand, maybe against Jeroboam. I've rejected your demands. I'm actually going to make things harder for you. I'll increase taxation. Things will be worse. Go and work. You know, only a fool wouldn't be able to guess how that would go down. And he must have been then a fool, because he just expected people would just continue. Remember, the people that are unhappy are in the majority, but he can't even access that. He tells them that he is going to make things difficult. Was he trusting his army? Don't you know that even the army has challenges? Because the army, it can't kill its own people. So if all of them come as one man, not equipped with any armament, but still they will win the day. That's what the Arab Spring, so-called, did all across North Africa. And I think it will be important, very, very important, that you understand what that is. That foolishness is not an asset in leadership. You need to make wise decisions. And by wise decisions, I'm not suggesting that you make the very best from the beginning, but you now know there are people around you who are wise. Seek their advice. Don't go to people like you who don't know much, and they are purporting to advise you. But let's be clear. It's not that Rehoboam did not have wise people. It's that he rejected their advice and went to look for advice from young people. And I think that's very unfortunate, a very unfortunate thing that we need to think about. You know, after hearing the demands of the northern half of the United Kingdom, he has ignored them. What has led to that? Picking the wrong people to advise you. So your advisors should be picked carefully, very, very carefully. In one fell swoop, Rehoboam has lost half of his kingdom simply by that foolishness. Thank you, Rehoboam listened to a prophet of the Lord and did not pursue oral civil war, because this was the doing of the Lord. So the prophet said, let them go. At least you'll have peace with the small proportion that is remaining. Within 5 years, however, Rehoboam's kingdom of Judah was living in rebellion against the Lord. He led, even the one that remained, he led it into rebelling against God. In turn, the Lord moved Egypt's Pharaoh to attack Judah, still in the days of Rehoboam. God is a God of the second chance. But if you refuse the first and the second chance, my friend, you can only end up in trouble. So make sure that you benefit from the second chance and that you use it well. This guy got a second chance. He was going to lose even his kingdom, because if he went into war, my friend Jeroboam was capable of winning the war, and Jeroboam would have ended up with the total kingdom. So by listening to advice, this time he was able to keep the small proportion of the kingdom. In desperation, Rehoboam allowed the Pharaoh to seize all his wealth now that he has attacked. And he took everything that David and Solomon had saved in the royal palace and the sacred temple. That was vast wealth accumulated over a period of time by very rich kings. It's highly doubtful this would have ever happened if Israel and Judah had not split into two. Divide and rule. By them going different ways, they have separate armies. And Judah was not having a big army as such. There's trouble. Big responsibility of a leader is to be the uniting force, not the dividing force. Find ways of bringing people together, not of dividing them. Divided we stand. Divided we fall. Together we stand. It should be a maxim of any leader. He should not be the one that is sowing seeds of discord and differences among the people. I think one needs to be very careful how we are dealing with it. So what is it that you are doing that is bringing differences among people, causing them to have division? Some are pro you, some are against you. Why don't you try to bring everybody together? Don't allow any advisor to bring you to where you have some people you hate. Try to be as inclusive as possible for the sake of your kingdom, and so that you are able to deal with the matter in a way that will bring you peace. And it is important to take this. In the end, as we finish the story of Rehoboam, the guy dies, but he has reigned over the kingdom of Judah for 17 years. Of course, that's longer than the son of Jeroboam did for 2 years. Worse, his son Abijah had even a shorter reign of only 3 years. That's the kind of legacy that Rehoboam left. And like Rehoboam, may you and me as the leaders never listen to and heed foolish counsel, let alone forsake the Lord our God. We are trying to analyze, why do you think Rehoboam failed? There's a contribution of his background, the way he was brought up. That's one possibility. But we are not holding the background as a determinant. It could influence, but as an adult, now he could have done something better. But I think the second reason why he ended up failing is self-confidence. People oversell self-confidence, where you don't want advice. You think you know best. The Bible tells us pride comes before a fall. And what is pride? Pride is thinking that you know it all, you are the best, nobody can walk you, like they say in Kenya. I think it's important to start realizing that pride that makes you not listen to people whom you can verify know better than you will bring you down. And it brought down our friend. So you need to be very careful of your background, study it, don't copy something because previous generation did it. Have a good reason why you are keeping it. But number two, seek counsel from people that are knowledgeable. Of course, it's not that enough that they are knowledgeable, but there are people who like you. Because you see, even a knowledgeable person can mislead you. Seek counsel from somebody knowledgeable, but somebody who is patriotic and is happy with you. And number three, somebody who is willing to be asked questions, so that it's not just whatever he says, you must follow. I think so that finally the decision is yours, not that one of your advisors or people that are giving you advice. So that's one of the things that you always remember about Rehoboam, how he took the advice of young people instead of taking the advice of the elders. Number three, I think he himself was foolish. He did not just take the wrong advice. It's not just the background, it's not just the wrong advice, but he himself was actually foolish. He made decisions that could only show foolishness. And it's good that the Lord had already determined that he did not want to take away the kingdom from the house of David. Because even the tribe that in Benjamin and Judah that remained with him could also have been lost. He was a foolish king. How do you tell people that you are going to, who are complaining about how rough things are? I'm even going to rougher. Basically, you are telling them, rebel. It's okay, rebel. I can handle rebellion. That's foolishness. Especially at the beginning of his reign. To want that the first item on his agenda is to fight with his own subjects. I think it was a level of foolishness. And I think we are learning that a leader should certainly avoid foolishness and not be involved in it. And finally, the reason why Rehoboam is in trouble is because he was not a worshiper of God. He could not go to God to seek the help of God or to seek the advice of God because he was not worshiping him. Not because God was not available to be worshipped, but just decided he wanted to follow the ways of the tribes around him. He did not want to be committed to the Jewish God. And I think that's one of the things that can be a problem. Any one of us who chooses not to have the fear of God is in trouble. The Bible says the definition of foolishness is not to worship, is not to know God. The fool has said there is no God. In other words, one of the ways of knowing you are becoming a fool is to start doubting that God is there. Start doubting that you need his help. Start doubting, not acknowledging the role he is playing in your own life. And that will ensure that you end up falling away and your leadership failing. So which of these things that brought down Rehoboam are you struggling with? May you take the wisdom to avoid taking the route Rehoboam followed, so that you can truly be a person who will lead a life that will be honoring to God. Thank you very much.